Boring history for sleep, why you wouldn't live a day in the Middle Ages if you were a shoemaker, asterisk. The shoemaker's son. Edric was born under a gray sky, in a cottage where the hearth fire never burned brightly enough. His father, a shoemaker like his father before him, spent most of his days hunched over a wooden bench, tapping hobnails into leather saws while muttering about market prices and damp cowhide. Shoemaking was not a glamorous life. The leather stank. The tools were dull. But for Edric, the quiet rhythm of hammer and awl was comforting. It was the sound of stability in a world where the grain harvest could fail and plague could roll in from the east. Every morning, Edric would wake at dawn, sweep the dusty floor of the workshop, and lay out strips of leather with aching precision. His mother would bring boiled oats, and his father would grunt approval if Edric's hands didn't tremble while stitching seams. It was not happiness, exactly, but it was life. Predictable. And in the 14th century, that was more than most could ask for. First steps into craftsmanship. Edric's apprenticeship began formally at age 9. A parchment, sealed with wax, declared him an official apprentice of the town's shoemakers' guild. He could not read the words, but he felt their weight. The guild master, Aldwin, was a stooped man with thick fingers and little patience. His workshop smelled of vinegar, soot, and goat. For weeks, Edric was assigned only to scrape sinew and wash tools. No stitching, no measuring, just scraping. Your hands must learn the tools before your mind does, Aldwin would say, again and again. Days were long. Edric learned to differentiate calf leather from goat hide by smell alone. He learned which thread held up in cold weather and which cracked in frost. He learned that shoes were not just made. They were measured, molded, and muttered over. The master's workshop. Aldwin's workshop was not grand. It had 2 benches, a single window, and a cracked clay brazier for heat. Yet it was the heart of the town's shoemaking. Aldwin made boots for bailiffs, sandals for monks, and soft indoor slippers for the mayor's mother. Each tool had a name. The lapstone, the bristle, the lasting pliers. Edric would whisper their names at night, like a prayer. He was not allowed to touch the good awls. Not yet. Instead, he was given worn tools, bent with age. If he dropped one, he would scrub floors. If he bent one further, he would go without supper. Still, Edric never complained. He watched. He learned. He grew calluses and patience. Tools of the trade. By the 2nd year, Edric had memorized every tool. He could sharpen an awl blindfolded. He knew the best angle to pull a stitch so it wouldn't pucker the leather. He could make paste from boiled hooves to glue saws. Tools were expensive. Edric guarded them like gold. Each night, he would oil the knife blades and hang the bristles in rows. He learned to balance a hammer just by the sound it made when striking leather stretched on a last. He never made a full shoe. Not yet. But when Aldwin sliced a new hide, he let Edric trace outlines in chalk. Small victories. Leather and lore. Edric's hands grew stronger, his back more bent. He could now identify leather by origin. English ox, Flemish goat, North Sea seal. Tanning was still a mystery to him. Master Aldwin described it only vaguely. They soak it in dog dung, lime, and oak bark. It's best not to ask more. Still, Edric longed to see a tannery. He'd heard of the vast, steaming pits where skins softened under sun and stench. He'd heard of boys falling in, of fingers lost to rot. Yet leather was life. Without it, there were no shoes. And without shoes, men limped and died. Stitching stories. Finally, in his 4th year, Edric stitched his first sole. It was crooked. Aldwin snorted, but let it pass. Better crooked than undone, he muttered. Edric learned the spiral stitch, the saddle stitch, and how to pull thread so tight it hummed. He soaked flax in beeswax to make it hold. He practiced on scraps. Hundreds of them. Some nights, he dreamed of thread. Endless, looping thread that wrapped around his fingers and dragged him into darkness. The turn shoe technique, asterisk. Turn shoes were the most common medieval footwear, stitched inside out and then turned. A clever trick, but difficult. Edric watched Aldwin twist the soft leather like cloth. A seam here, a curve there. Then, flip. The shoe revealed its final shape. Edric tried and failed. His shoes collapsed or tore. But slowly, his fingers learned. Turn, fold, pull. Stitch, press, twist. He made his first complete pair by age 15. Aldwin grunted approval. Not bad. Won't last long. But not bad. Edric smiled for a week. Guilds and regulations. The Shoemakers Guild ruled their trade with ink and iron. Prices were fixed. Designs were controlled. Only journeymen could work for wages. Only masters could open a shop. Apprentices? They followed orders. Guild inspections came twice a year. If a shoe had uneven stitches, the craftsman could be fined. If the leather was poor, the workshop could be closed. Edric memorized the guild rules, over 50 of them. No shoes on Sundays. No foreign leather without license. No hidden nails. He followed them like scripture. Trials and errors. Mistakes were punished silently. No beatings, just shame. When Edric overcut a pair of sandals, the leather was ruined. Aldwin said nothing, just handed him a new hide and pointed at the bench. Once, Edric burned a sole too long over coals. The result crumbled under a nobleman's foot. The man cursed, demanded a refund, and never returned. Edric cried that night, but Aldwin only said, "Next time, you'll watch the fire." He did. The apprentice's test asterisk. At age 17, Edric stood before the guild hall. His final test, craft a pair of shoes in 2 days, with no help. Flawless, by guild standards. He worked silently. He chose thick, pliable leather. He boiled glue. He cut, stitched, turned, and finished with beeswax polish. The guild master examined the shoes. He twisted them, sniffed them, tapped the soles. Acceptable. Edric became a journeyman. His apprenticeship was over. But the hard part was just beginning. A new dawn, a new town asterisk. Edric left his master's home the next morning, carrying only a tool satchel and a folded letter proving he was now a journeyman. The cobbled road was uneven beneath his worn shoes, ironically, made by his own hand. He walked slowly, taking in the empty moorlands, farms, and far-off chapels. Towns in the Middle Ages were scattered, and the road was cold. He shared bread with a charcoal burner and slept under hedges. His destination, a nearby market town where shoemakers were scarce, but feet were many. The journey took 4 days. Finding work in a new workshop asterisk. The town of Linstow was small. 2 streets, a church, an inn, and a tannery that gave off a scent like rotting apples and wet dogs. Edric found a shoemaker named Hilda, a widowed craftswoman who ran her own shop. She looked him up and down before agreeing to take him on. "You work. You don't talk much. I'll feed you. That's it." Edric nodded. That was more than enough. Women in the trade asterisk. Hilda was quiet but skilled. She worked fast, often finishing 2 pairs before Edric finished one. She spoke little during the day, but at night, after supper, she would explain how women had always been in the trade, especially in the early stages, tanning, pattern cutting, and lining. "Men think they own the guilds," she said once. "But we make the soles." Edric learned from her. Her cuts were precise, her stitches invisible. She made shoes that nobles bought and wore twice before discarding. He thought of Aldwin often, but now admired Hilda's quiet strength. The leather tax asterisk. Linstow had strict taxes. Every hide used was recorded, and a portion was owed to the bailiff. Hilda hated it. "If you waste leather, you pay for it twice," she said. Edric had to be exact. Every pair was measured down to the 1/4 inch. Scraps were saved for patches or child-sized shoes. They worked by candlelight. If you couldn't work in low light, you'd starve in winter. The cobbler's market asterisk. Once a month, Linstow held its cobbler's market. Edric helped set up a simple stall, no fancy signs, just shoes hung by leather loops and displayed on barrels. People came to try on shoes, ask for repairs, or barter butter for soles. One man wanted a pair for his oxen. Another, a pilgrim, asked for sandals that could survive walking to Canterbury. Edric bartered 2 pairs for a linen shirt and a block of lard. Hilda just nodded. "You're learning." Customers and complaints asterisk. Shoemaking wasn't just craft, it was customer service. Edric met people who insisted their feet were smaller than they were, who wanted red dye from Italy but couldn't pay for vinegar. Children cried when their feet were measured. Nobles barked orders. One man wore his shoes backwards, then demanded a refund. Hilda told Edric to smile and stitch. "They pay, they're right. But we don't forget." He kept a mental list of the worst customers. It grew long. Winter work and frozen leather asterisk. Winter in the Middle Ages was brutal. Leather stiffened. Tools cracked. Fires needed constant tending. Edric worked with gloves, warming wax over embers. His breath fogged the glass windows, when the town had any. Most used oiled parchment. They made fur-lined boots, stuffed with straw. Nobles ordered expensive slippers. The poor came with patch clogs. Snow leaked into the workshop. Mice chewed the soles. Hilda kept sewing. Repair work and rivets asterisk. Repairing shoes took more skill than making new ones. You had to reverse someone else's bad stitching, reinforce worn heels, and make it all look new. Edric learned to hammer copper rivets, flatten curled soles, and sew fresh patches where feet had burst through seams. Repairs feed us, Hilda said. New shoes just show off. They charged based on time, not style. An ugly shoe took just as long to fix. The guild comes calling asterisk. One gray morning, 2 guild officials arrived. They asked for licenses, inspected tools, measured soles with iron rods, and examined stitches under candlelight. Edric stood silently while Hilda argued over a tax discrepancy. They left with 2 shillings and a warning. Your journeyman must register if he stays. Hilda looked at Edric. Welcome to bureaucracy. Nightfall and reflection asterisk. That night, Edric sat outside, sharpening his knife on a flat stone. The moon hung over the abbey wall, and the tannery stench had faded with the wind. He thought of the days spent stitching, the aches in his hands, the pride in a well-balanced shoe. He had no fortune, no title, just the knowledge that feet would walk farther because of him. In the Middle Ages, that was enough. Shoes for the dead asterisk. The local priest arrived with an odd request, burial shoes. Soft leather slippers with no heel, no hard sole. Edric was surprised. Why would the dead need shoes? To walk into the afterlife, the priest replied plainly. He and Hilda crafted 6 pairs in silence. All for plague victims. Some had no names. Some were children. The silence in the shop after was heavier than any hammer. Taxes tightened the stitch asterisk. As the town grew, so did its taxes. Guild fees, stall rent, leather tariffs. A visiting tax collector accused Hilda of underreporting. She was fined again. They cut back on oil for lamps. Wax was saved. Edric's supper shrank to porridge and turnips. But they stitched through it, because that's what you did. The tannery fire asterisk. One frostbitten morning, smoke choked the air. The tannery, burning. Flames licked the skies. That tannery had supplied every shoemaker in a 30-mile radius. With no leather, there were no shoes. Edric and Hilda ran out, helping pass buckets. By noon, it was ash. 2 workers died. For a month, work halted. Repairs came in slowly, but raw leather was now gold. Leather smuggling and risk asterisk. Desperate times drew desperate trades. Whispers came. Someone smuggling hides from across the river. Hilda warned Edric, don't get involved. But he was tempted. Cheaper leather. Easier profit. One night, he met the smugglers. Young men with fast horses. They offered him 2 hides for 1 silver. He declined. The next day, one of them was caught, his hands cut off by town order. Edric didn't sleep for 3 nights. Broken needle, broken will asterisk. Edric's stitching all snapped mid-stitch, cutting his palm deeply. Blood soaked the leather. Infection festered. He couldn't work for 2 weeks. Fevered dreams haunted him. Hilda drowning in shoes, leather crawling like snakes. He woke weak. Hilda gave him willow bark tea and stitched alone until her own hands bled. You'll heal. But no more heroics, she warned. It was the first time he considered giving up shoemaking. Pilgrims and their demands asterisk. Linstow became a pass-through town for pilgrims en route to Canterbury. Dozens arrived, feet blistered, soles torn. Some had coins. Most offered prayer beads. Edric stitched sandals and patched boots for all of them. He heard stories, visions, saints, miracles. One woman claimed her shoes healed because he stitched them on a Sunday. Edric laughed, but Hilda frowned. They believe. Don't mock it. The Shoemaker's Fair asterisk. The region's annual fair was held beyond the town wall. Tents, carts, games, and a special shoemaker's competition. Hilda insisted Edric enter. Let them see what your hands can do. He crafted a pair of riding boots, sleek, stitched with dyed leather and brass buttons. He didn't win, but a noble took notice. Ordered 3 more pairs. Paid in silver. Edric smiled for the first time in weeks. A night with the nobles. Invited to deliver shoes to the Lord's manor, Edric dressed in his best. The castle was cold, but bright with candles. The nobleman offered him wine and asked about stitching. You make shoes as if they're poetry, the Lord said. For a moment, Edric forgot the taxes, the cuts, the blood. He was just a maker, recognized. He returned late, and Hilda nodded knowingly. You're not a boy anymore. A letter from Aldwin asterisk. A letter arrived from his old master. Aldwin was aging, his eyesight gone. He asked Edric to return and run the shop. Hilda read it aloud twice. It's your choice. Edric spent the night thinking of stone roads, candlelit shops, fair stalls, and burial shoes. He gave Hilda half his tools, hugged her once. Thank you. By dawn, he was on the road again. Home again, but different asterisk. Returning to his village, Edric saw the same crooked tavern, same slanted roofs. But he was not the same man. He entered Aldwin's shop, now dusty and quiet. He cleaned it, sharpened every blade, lit a candle. Then he hung his sign, Edric, Master Shoemaker asterisk. And as he began stitching, he whispered, let them walk far. The apprentice asterisk. Weeks after reopening the shop, Edric met Tomas, a boy with cracked hands and no shoes. He saw in the boy his own past. Want to learn? The boy nodded. Tomas was clumsy. Needles pricked fingers. Threads tangled. But he was eager. Edric taught him rhythm, patience, and how each soul tells a story. The shop had laughter again. Hilda's news asterisk. A traveler from Linstow brought news. Hilda had passed away from fever. Edric sat in silence for hours. He carved her name into a leather strap and tied it around the candle holder at the workbench. May your hands never tire, he whispered. Winter and war boots asterisk. Snow fell early. A nearby lord recruited villagers for border skirmishes. Soldiers needed boots. Edric worked day and night with Tomas. The boots weren't pretty, just thick, nailed soles and extra toe protection. But they kept feet warm. Will they come back in them? Tomas asked. Some. Edric replied quietly. Fires of the guild asterisk. The Shoemakers Guild sent a messenger. Edric had been elected to represent rural craftsmen. He was shocked. In town, he presented samples. They weren't polished, but every pair held miles of hardship. And the guild noticed. They gave him silver tools and an engraved awl. He gave them honesty. We don't make shoes to be pretty. We make them to be worn by the tired. The storm that took the roof asterisk. One night, a thunderstorm ripped through the village. The shop's roof collapsed. Rain soaked the tools. Tomas tried to cover them with cloth. We'll fix it. Edric smiled. You say that like a master. Neighbors helped rebuild, because Edric had stitched shoes for all their children. The blind woman's shoes asterisk. An old blind woman came with threadbare slippers. Can you make me a pair I can wear to meet my daughter? She asked. He stitched soft leather with wide straps, and a tiny bell sewn near the heel, so she could always hear each step. She left crying. Tomas didn't ask. Festival of Candles asterisk. The village held its first winter candle festival. Edric crafted tiny leather shoes to hang from trees. Each held a name, living or gone. Tomas made one for Hilda. Edric made one for his mother. They lit them, and the night glowed. Edric's illness asterisk. Edric fell ill. Coughing fits. Fever. Tomas cared for him, made broth, kept the fire burning. One night, Edric called him close. Don't just stitch for coin. Stitch for meaning. Tomas nodded, tears burning his eyes. The final pair asterisk. Edric recovered slowly, but knew his hands had limits now. He crafted one last pair, children's boots, dyed red. I want them to walk where I never could, he said. He left them by the road for whoever needed them. Tomas, the shoemaker asterisk. Years passed. Edric taught fewer lessons, but Tomas grew. His hands quickened. His stitching was smooth. The sign changed. Tomas and Edric, shoemakers asterisk. Travelers came from far towns. Some just wanted to see the man who once stitched sandals for the dead and boots for the poor. And every pair still whispered stories of pain, love, snow, and hope.